we always try to create agendas when people come to meetings and so they know what they're going to do and what's expected. So in this part of the agenda, of course, it is your board docs documents that we're going to follow. And the rest of the afternoon, just to give you a picture, is to talk about the mission and the goals of the district, just to kind of review it if you want to add any more ideas, change. Then we will present the data and the outcomes for this year's goals, Destination 2020. You'll see where successes happened and what was done, where failures happened, what was done. And then just like you have ideas for next steps, when we reviewed as administration, we came up with, boy, you know what we should do is this. The better outcome would be this. So we'll add those in with your ideas. Then during lunch, we're actually going to get them written down so everybody has everyone's on the different categories of the Destination 2020 goals. And then in the afternoon is when we start to narrow what is it that we're going to focus on. Because if 50 things are important, the most important, then there's probably nothing that's really important. So we will work in a kind of a narrowing down general facilitation opportunity to get where the board then can agree, yes, we want administration to come back with a plan to do these things, and that's what we'll do. That'll be our sailing orders. So with that, the first thing on the agenda was mission. And ASD's mission is educating all students for success in life. And there might be folks who've come to talk about how to change your mission. The work that I've done in the research is ASD has one of the best missions, because missions should be something, they're really just words on a paper until everybody can get behind them. And we say a lot, educating all students for success in life. That is what our mission is. It's not too complicated. It's not overwhelming. It's something that everybody can say. And technically, when you look up research, they say keep it simple. Keep it simple that everybody knows. And so we might want to tweak it, though, if there's something else that you like. Of course, all the branding on everything we have is educating all students for success in life. So we can really, at this point in time, that's been our mission. That, to me, is a very, very strong mission. Is there anyone that sees something in here that perhaps has another idea to add something, take something away? Or we can just say, you know what, that's our mission, and we're fine with that. Whichever, at this point in time, just a open discussion.
The simplicity of the success in life, is in part of the interpretation, whether that be college or career, vocational track, or whether it's being a homemaker. That can be defined based on what the person's personal value system says. So I like it. It's ambiguous, but it's also not.
It's based on the needs of the community or the students, what they want. Yeah. I did a lot of research when I was applying for a job, and the goals and mission are actually pretty strong for ASD, is what I, in my research, noted. So there's some tweaks that we've recognized in the goals, and we'll share those when we get to them in regard to how some of the data is collected with the metrics that go to the goals. But the goals are great, but the metrics, how we talk about them, is hard to capture. So it's really difficult to measure. And so maybe we tweak some of those things when we get there. But with that, we are ASD, and our mission is educating all students for success in life. And how about everybody in this room share with me what's ASD's mission? Educating all students for success in life. One more time. Educating all students for success in life. All right, see, easy to remember, simple, has meaning. Truly, the simplest missions are the most successful. Because again, words on a page, or somebody's belief, a belief system that everybody can get around. Everybody can get around that one. So, all right, so the next thing that the board set were the Destination 2020 goals. And I believe that these were probably set about 6 years ago.
2012.
Yep.
June 2012.
Okay, June 2012. So June 2000, next school year would be the 6th. So I just remember them coming out because I, again, was in the business of being a superintendent and working with the district. and you pay attention to everything. So very good goals, very defined in these areas, and we call them lakes for the fishing day. But performance, graduation, attendance, recommendations, safety, and efficiencies. And in the ones that we could have some discussion when we get to them, the one in attendance. So that one's a little tricky because we want 90% attendance from 90% of students, or 100% of students with 90% attendance. And our attendance rate as reported by our data to the state is actually over 90%. It's just that the way this is calculated, and working with a RISE and United Way and some of these other things, we don't really have an attendance problem, we have a chronic attendance problem. There's very few kids with the most number of absences. So when we address attendance to everyone and make it, ubiquitous, we do get kids who are sick or who really should be home with their families in school. We make them, some kids feel guilty when they really shouldn't be there, and others it's not having any meaning. And so what we want to do, and of course when we work to achieve goals, you find out where you're not doing well, and that's where you put your resources. We are not doing well with kids who are chronic. So we've had great community support. When we have community support, it is a fabulous thing for PR, it's a fabulous thing for our district to give away a car. But a student who doesn't get a chance after the first 2 weeks of school to win that car, I don't care, it's too far away. You need short duration and quick wins for kids to accomplish things. So they're already out of the game. Yep.
Just a comment, a middle school principal made to me that regardless of the big prizes, the most incentive for kids to show up is they got a pass to go to the front of the lunch line, cut line.
Yeah.
That was the biggest incentive of all, more than an iPad.
Yeah, exactly. What matters to kids and what matters, and really creating spaces that kids can't wait to get to is also what we're in the business for. So we're going to talk about that one, and we have some ideas, and hopefully the board and the lakes had some ideas in regard to that. We also noticed in some of these goals was, and we've talked about it before, was in regulation. We have a lot of variance in our system about how things are recorded, how things are graded, and what we want to do is have high standards with low variance, so that whether you live on the north side of town, east side of town, west side of town, or south, that when you go to an ASD school, there's a guarantee of high quality, and then everybody understands what that is. It doesn't change. Our cultures change. Our difference is we're going to have a standard and have things standardized, and we're going to have things customized for schools and areas of our city because people are involved. But when they say ASD, what does this mean in ASD? We need to lower our variance is the goal and increase our standards for all kids. And have that understanding. So we're working with that, and that's some of the challenges that we've had as administration. But in these, we have measurable outcomes goals, and that's what goals should have. They should have outcomes that you could actually look at to say, how do we do or not? And I've said over and over, when we measure something, it is just a number. But until you record something and then take a step back and look at it, you don't really know how you've done. And we're going to show you some numbers today that we continue to record and continue to get the same results. And so we need to not then look out the window and say, what's wrong with them? It's looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what are we doing that we need to change to get better outcomes for kids, for schools, for principals? Because in this building here, we're here to support everybody else, and that's our goal. So when we understand what the board wants in its schools, community wants in its schools, we build that capacity then. That's our jobs. So we can handle these one by one, and maybe as we report where we are and what we've done, and then each time we're going to talk about new, we can talk about whether we want to change them. How about that? Okay? So with that, we'll go ahead and start. This is the Performance Goal Initiative. And I don't know if do I need to use a microphone? Somebody said I might need to or no? Nope. Okay, I'm good. So the goal that was done, of course, we're looking for proficiency everywhere. But the one measurement that we're saying, engaging ourselves on, is reading proficiency. And this is good. Research demonstrates that children who meet certain markers for reading proficiency, like letter sound fluency, actually become readers. Many kids come to school saying their ABCs. We learn that on Sesame Street. We learn that everywhere. Actually, that's first, but the sound is actually more important than the letter itself. Because if you can put sounds together, then they make words. So kids come with ABCs, you need to really build that connection with sound. So that's why we do a letter sound fluency in kindergarten. And again, this is a curriculum-based measure. And curriculum-based measure is that you're actually using what you want students to learn, the curriculum, to help you measure what you want to know. So we're not taking some outside test to bring it in to the classroom to say, oh, we want them to read. We're actually using reading and sounds to measure kids. That's what a curriculum-based measure means. So letter sound fluency in the spring of 16 was 74.5, and in the spring of 17 was 79. Now, what would be interesting, these are each for grade level, but last year's first graders, or this year's first graders were last year's kindergarten. I want you to know that these tests, if I come in at the beginning of the year for letter sound fluency, there's so many sounds that I should know. As I hit December, I'm not measured on those sounds. I'm measured on those sounds plus these sounds. So the rate of the score to be proficient continues to grow because our kids should be growing over time. So if I were to test a kindergartner only on the sounds that were expected at the beginning, I'd only get that at the end. A lot of our kids will be passing. But the target continues to grow all through first grade, second grade, third grade. The target grows because the kids should grow. So it's harder in the middle of the year to score a certain score than it is at the beginning, okay? Because you should be learning. So just so you know, it's not a set target, it's actually dynamic. It moves because you're expected. If I'm in school for 4 months, I should be 4 months smarter and 4 months more capable. So reporting, we met in kindergarten. We did not meet in those in first grade and in third grade. Now, low-risk kids are kids who are on target. If you're low risk, you're on target. So we wanted to increase kids by 3% who were on target to move our targets higher, and we wanted to decrease the kids who weren't successful. In the dashboard, it looks like yellow or red, yellow, green. We wanted to shrink the red, increase the green. You don't want to increase the yellow because it could be kids moving down or kids moving up. You don't know what the yellow is, so you want the yellow to totally go away. It would be actually easier to do our jobs if we knew where they were going. But yellow means, uh-oh, you better pay attention to these kids because they're either going to really fall behind or they're just a little bit behind and you need to get them back up in the green zone. So by research, what is an intervention in kindergarten, first grade? 15 minutes, 3 days a week to help a kid catch up turns into 2 hours, 3 days a week by fourth grade. So if we don't catch them early, we can't, it's nearly unaffordable the more kids you have in a red zone. Because you'd have this many kids in a class and this many kids with one-on-one doing flashcards or we teaching them. So we need to improve instruction when instruction happens, which is in the classroom. Okay? So with that, I want to talk about what was done this year. We did not move to 4th, 5th, 6th. I mean, I always say, my doctorate was on CBMs, and curriculum-based measures are screeners. They tell you whether you're on target or not. When a child's not on target, then you do more assessment to find out what do I need to do. Is it fluency? Is it, do they not know their sounds? What is it that's holding them back? That's what I teach them, okay? But it's just a screener to let me know, oh, let me capture this kid, I need to do something more. And it's quick, it's like 10 minutes. So for above third grade, if kids are reading, what happens with curriculum-based measures, it turns into like what they call a close or a maze where they actually pick a word to finish a sentence. You probably had those tests where you read a sentence and you put something in. Or they do read. Kids start to try to beat the test. If I'm a reader and I can comprehend and I'm getting, then CBMs don't mean as much anymore. So our keeping track of those and making decisions because of them for readers who are already reading, that doesn't really make sense because if a fourth grader's reading a passage and trying to beat a former score, they're just going to read faster, especially when a reader. So I'm going to go, blah, 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 blah. Well, then you've lost prosody, which is, it needs to sound pleasant to the ear. So if we really want to know what our kids are doing, that's why we move to the map. The map will say, okay, once they're reading, what's the content then? How are they keeping up with the content? Okay? We didn't have another assessment, so we used CBMs. We're moving away from that. Once a child reads and is proficient in 3rd grade, it's okay. They can move on because they learn to read and then they read to learn. We need to start measuring what it is that they learn.
So clarification, Ames Web is a CBM?
Ames Web is a CBM. Dibbles is a CBM. Ames Web is a company that has curriculum-based measures. And you can have a math curriculum-based measure. It's the curriculum. You're just using what kids you want them to know to assess them. Math, on the other hand, has content. What do they know when they read something? Can they answer questions about it? This would just be fluency. Once a kid reads, I need to know if they're understanding what they read. CBMs are not comprehension tests. We need to move away from them once a kid reads and understands. So what did we do this year? We knew mid-year we were in trouble because we paid attention. So what is it that we've done? And I'm going to turn it over to the people who do it. Yep. What did we do?
Well, you got several things. You got some things up here we talked about. Just a few things as the year began. We began.
Stand up and talk louder, please.
All right. As we began the initiative this year, we realizing where we really needed to face because our results have been flat for a while, and knowing that there's something more important than learning to read, given that it's really the basis which lots of learning is built upon. Put a lot of professional development into place. Professional development with principals and teachers on scheduling, 90-minute blocks, other things, putting things into place. So that was put in, as well as some professional development with some of our intervention programs and things, really trying to beat this up, trying to require it with the new directors working with them. So we're really hopeful as went through, we found out that indeed things were kind of flat. So one of the things that, thank you to the board for approving the whole adoption curriculum review, and then we ultimately, so we did the curriculum review for our English language arts through K-5, found one that was that we approved of, one adopted, and then you guys also gave us the funding to be able to purchase K2, which will be implemented next year. So being able to have a research-based kind of program based on the new standards, those higher standards we've got, we're very hopeful. Combined with that, of course, is the instructional coach program that has been worked on and put together, realizing and not only drawing on our superintendent's experience, but also looking at Hattie's research and others and what has those largest effects and have the bigger impacts. And realizing instructional coaches are one of those things. So that has been quite the process put through. We're very excited about being able to use the coaches for effective implementation of the curriculum itself, and working with them on best instructional practices and strategies, as well as how to use that data. We've got the data, but as we looked at our whole multi-tiered systems of support, you heard Jenny talking just a little bit earlier about that. Very excited about this. Instructional coaches is not just out of the curriculum instruction department or just out of Title I. What we've gone together is curriculum instruction and special education and Title I and ELL and our what's Title VII, now Title VI, Indian education, really all coming together and working on this. What are we going to do with this multi-tier system support? How do we identify what kids need, and then how do we do it? Not just your special ed, so we're going to put you over here, your ELL, we're putting you over here, but what are those needs? So we're very excited that the instructional coaches, it's an amazing process. Heather Milden was part of that as well. Jenny was part of that. It's been an amazing process of identifying the folks, bringing them in, and then the professional development for them, which will largely at the beginning of the year, as they begin, will focus on this new curriculum that will be in
And it
place.
doesn't mean that it didn't happen before. You heard from 3 fabulous principals who in their schools paid attention to data, talked about how they arranged individually their schools to ensure that learning happened. It wasn't ubiquitous in the district though. And so we would continue for years and years and years to collect student learning data, how our kids are doing. But if we didn't do the next step of what are we going to do about it then? How are we going to support it? This building's function is to support schools so schools can support teachers, principals, to get the job done. So we've made deliberate changes. We now talk about, tell me how your reading is. What's happening with those scores? Where can I help you? Your third grade over here looks different than this third grade. What's happening here that isn't happening here? Or what's happening here that isn't happening here? So the kinds of conversations that sometimes we don't like to have because we think it's not our business, it's everybody's business. We've got 48,000 kids, and every single one of us here in administration and all the principals, it needs to be everybody's business that 48,000 kids succeed, not just those in my classroom or mine. So we have to start working together as teams, have teachers work together, have them build teams, have them talk about what they're doing to get the results they want. We never asked the question, we never followed through. Individuals did. But certainly from here, we didn't follow through and keep that mark and then put the support where the support's needed. We all don't come with the same assets. You know, I might be better at this, somebody might be better at this. Let's work together to figure out so that it's not a chance of a school for a kid. It cannot be the chance of the school or the chance of the teacher that you get in that year. We have to ensure a system of guarantees.
The other part that's come in with this is the use of the data dashboard. It's a tool that principals have been able to utilize, we've been able to utilize, the supervisors as well as principals to really identify where those kids are, who's doing what. That data may have been there before, but it was much harder to utilize. Now, looking at particular populations of kids, what we need to do, where that school is, where it is in relation to others, and seeing where the bright spots are. Anyway, that tool is very exciting. Having that data just accessible, it's really caused a new thought, and particularly even at secondary. And this whole multi-tiered system of support is now moving to that and looking at what kids' needs are as opposed to just what comes next, no matter how you feel. So very excited about that data dashboard. And there's some new things coming in that data dashboard too, operationally, but I think that's the next step. So.
Who's that one? Yep.
So I have a question. So we've been presented to the board the three schools that have definitely done some innovative things to bring the reading scores up. I think it would be interesting to walk through a school that is struggling and see how we are addressing that, or what helps we're giving them, or how, take a school that is struggling and say, this is what we've done first, this is what we're doing second, that sort of thing, so that we get a feel of what is that
You want
process.
that? I mean, as a board, we know that.
Yeah.
That's what our jobs are, but the board wants to know that?
Yeah,
Okay, we'll
I think
present
that
that
would be
next
important.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, how about we could do actually a little mini action research of our literacy coaches and things, and we could talk to our supervisors as they work, and start at the beginning and then at the end to share that. Because there are certain things that you can do, research demonstrates, that get a different result. So,
That is the heart of what our directors are doing in their work with the principals.
yeah.
It would just be nice to see an
Yeah.
example then.
Yeah, we'll do that as we move next year.
Okay.
See, one of our goals is that the idea of a multi-tiered system of support applies to adults and to schools. So like we really have to, when we do our training, we want to try to get 80% of the teachers to really get it. But then there's some that struggle or don't want to do it or don't get it, and they're like that tier 2 where you have to give additional help. And then there's a small handful of people that are tier 3 that really need to be held accountable and asked to do certain things and they're required. And the same thing happens in administration. And so part of our goals here in academic, going forward in academic services, is to build those support systems. And that's really the next steps here. One of the pieces of data that we're bringing that's on the list here is, you asked, we're expanding MAP to grades 3 to 8 next year. This provides better tools for making decisions. The second thing on there talks about increasing the scope of the data dashboard. The dashboard right now is sort of this summative thing that tells how we're doing at this high level, but getting that down to a classroom teacher and to a parent to know what that means. And there's a lot of layers in between. So one of our goals for next year is to make these tools better usable to the staff. A good example this year was the tool that we brought in for the MAP testing so that middle school principals could schedule using data, not just simply teacher or child interest in a class, but which kid needs that remedial class. And they're put in there and we default out, not default in. So that's two. The third part is just the idea of this system of support. So those are the three next steps that we have put. And just quickly glancing at your lake and pond, I noticed there was a couple of comments from the board that actually fit or similar to those that are up there.
So these are specifically what we're doing. So anytime you see next steps, we've identified holes, in our boat. We don't want our boat to sink in the pond or lake. So these are some of the things that we know are going to help us. Because again, we can have the data and we can talk about it all we want, but admiring that is not going to help. We need to say, what is it that we're going to do and how are we going to do it and how are we going to be account for it? Because if we're spending money on it or time on it, teacher time on it, we need to account for it. And it needs to be valuable to them. With that, we're going to call off some of these. So if anything else at this point in time comes to your mind in regard to performance, Star gave us one, and they're recording comments over there to be sure that they come back up for goals. But for performance, expand language immersion in neighborhood schools to include French, Korean, and Arabic. Compile AASB policy and ARs that define performance. More data dashboard map, which is interesting, it's right there. And then better coordination with apprentice and vocational programs to speak to those opportunities. Also under this goal, that like the pond is stretching the goal, but we know it's part of it, is expand mentorship programs to ninth graders who failed at least one quarter. And there has to be an accountability that standards are being routed, students are being routed to the correct paths rather. Right. So that we understand who are our students and where is their next step ready to go. And when Mark said an important thing here, we default, our default is going to be you are in that higher level class, and the only time if your data demonstrate that you need others. We've used our data to keep kids out. We're using our data to put kids in. We have used our data to not have kids have access. Our level was so high outside of the range for like higher level math. It was in the 90th percentile. When research says kids who score at the 70th percentile in math are ready for pre-algebra, algebra 1. We've kept them out. By whoever set that prior goal wasn't using research to determine that. So, and that was us. That was us. We're taking responsibility for it. We're changing that, and we're saying what is best for kids is to have access, to have access to the courses that they can. We've actually told parents, sorry, we don't want your kid to do that. Now we have kids who, teachers have the kids and say they should be in a higher level course. They're like bored in that class. They need to move up. So it's interesting. There's a lot of teacher recommendations now, especially at the high school level, that saying, boy, they should have been in a higher level. So we're trying to get that correct and get it right, because not all courses and kids need to be doing the same thing. They need to do what is best for them that's going to get them to the next level.
I think we probably should even warn the board, as we do that next step, the pushback will come. There will be students who perhaps are really high on the MAP test and it shows they are ready to learn advanced math. They may have a C or a D in a class and the teacher is saying they don't deserve to be in that class. The MAP test pinpoints where they're ready to learn. It's not saying what your grade is. The student's ready to learn that material.
We're not doing it
We're
on what
not
you
doing
deserve.
it only based on a teacher referral. That'll be considered. It's not like we're saying it's not looked at, but the primary default is where you're ready to learn. Then we'll deal with the anomalies. So you probably should know that. You may get some comments from people as the classes begin to fill in next year.
More kids will have access, that's the goal. And from the demographics we need to take a look at to ensure who is it that's having access and who isn't. So we're going to add your ideas to next steps. Those ones I read. If you have anything else for performance, go ahead and keep writing it. You can stick it up, and then at lunch we'll gather the rest. But you'll see an entire list of all these ideas that are going to come back to you in the afternoon. Yeah.
You know, the other thing I see with this maps that I think will help a lot too is our educational equity. With it not being subjective
Very good point.
to the teacher and moving them up, but the maps will tell them where they need to.
So everybody has unconscious bias.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's very
We all come to the table with a context. Yeah. And it's, again, and I have to say over and over again, it's not a lack of work. We've worked really, really hard. We didn't identify the right work that's going to get the kids to the next level. So, is this kind of going to work for you to get your ideas in together? Okay, so we'll go on to the next one, which is graduation, and we can like go woohoo on that one. I think Kirsten is going to present some of that. I'm not sure who else is, but so the goal was to decrease the percentage of secondary students receiving Fs for semester grades. We did that as a whole. We always looked at our aggregate when things are put together instead of disaggregated data. And remember, the dashboard showed us that while we had a graduation rate of 80%, we could look at certain student groups and they were not experiencing that same success. So in the goal, we said not only do you have to have that increase, a decrease of percentage of Fs, but we want an increase, the graduation rate, we want an increase in graduation rate of all different student groups as well as a decrease in making Fs. So rather than looking at us all and saying, oh, yep, we did a great job, we wanted to be sure that all student groups, back to your point about Equity Star, we wanted to see where are we with everyone. And so last year, second semester, that percentage of students in each group had an F. So last year, this is 7 through 12 secondary, 7 through 12. So every 7th through 12th grade student, if it's a middle school, it was 6th graders. Almost a third of them, 28%, received at least one F in our whole system. And then if you look at special education or Alaska Native, in those student groups last year, that's where they fell. So half of Alaska Native students last year in those grades received at least one F. So we want to change that. Not only everyone, but in the individual student groups. This year, it decreased total students, and then look at the decreases in those individual categories. Now, we charged the school. How we worked with this was the supervisors shared the individual data from each school. They worked with that leadership team at the school to say, here's your data, what are some ideas? We shared what West High did. The counselors asked, what is it that we need to do? They actually went back to the kids and the teachers to say, how could we improve? We gave that one example once at a board meeting. But every school came up with a plan because not every school had the same data. Again, we're standardizing what we want and everybody customizes how it looks like. They filled out a school improvement plan, every school, and we continued with supervisors to go back and visit. How are you doing on this? How are your goals in this area? What are you doing? And so with that, I'm going to go ahead. That's kind of what we did. We had some changes, which is positive. Yes?
How much, I call it quality control, was exercised over what the individual schools were up to report?
And that would, I'm going to have a supervisor talk about that. We're moving more towards coaching and supervising. Really, to your point, when I...
Because I'm hearing anecdotal things.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely. And they're still there. They're still there. Just don't give an F, is what I hear. Dr. Bishop has a war on Fs. Don't give an F. It's not about the F. The F shows something's going on, that our kids aren't successful. But last year, when I started, actually it was last year, I noticed that when I came, I asked Glenn, actually I talked to Glenn first, and I said, Glenn, look at these scores. They haven't moved. What do you do? And he says, oh my gosh, each of us has 30 some odd schools. So when you talk about quality control in business, it's 1 to 7 direct report. He had over 30 direct reports, and he had to do with discipline and everything else, but yet help instructional learning. So the first thing I did was reevaluate the kinds of positions we had at the district office and immediately added 3 school supervisors to the elementary level, and that is Heather, Dan, and Marcus. And then they worked with Chris, what's that?
Yes, and Chris.
Chris and, Chris was there though.
Yes, she was.
Yeah, Chris and Glenn. So now they have 5 people for 60. So the quality control, and I'll have them talk about that, but we did find, we have tiered systems for support of principals now. You know, who kind of does it, gets it. You saw some of those at early presentations. Who do we need to have more support for? So I'll turn it over to Seth.
Yeah, to answer Dave's question, it was uneven. It wasn't, you talked about quality control as a district. It was very much a site-based. Each school had initiatives. And I think most of them took it serious and I think did really good work. There were some that came across as just quick giving Fs, which wasn't the plan. I'll give you a couple examples of some good things that happened. You know, at Bartlett, at the end of the semester, they would take the last 3 weeks, and if a kid had 3 or more Fs, they pulled them down, they looked to see which of those classes does a student still have a chance of coming through with a C or a D and pulling it out. And then they went to the others, and if there was only one class, they went to the 2 teachers where there was no way he was going to pass, and they asked if they could pull from there into a study block, and they would work 2 or 3 periods on the one class that still had a chance with the oversight of an administrator or teacher working with them, and they would save one of the 3 classes. So that was an example of one school's initiative, but it was uneven. So one might have done that, and Kirsty can probably give examples from other principals she's heard of, but it was not a quality control thing from the top. It really was bubbled up from the initiatives of the schools, so they all did different things.
And there's value on both ends, but we have to understand what quality is, yeah. So, Chris.
So I'll give you a couple other examples. You want me to stand?
Yep.
I'm coming from South High School where I was the principal for the past 7 years, and the way that we tackled our look at failure rates is 3 weeks into the school year, before it's too late for a kid to recover from a failing grade, the counselor, the parents, and the teacher of the course that the student was failing at, we would identify the kids that were failing, call those meetings together, and we would have a team approach with the parents and the student present to come up with our plan of how we were going to get that kid back on track. And then we consistently met with that student until they were back on track and doing well. And part of that was also weekly meetings that we have at our building with administrators, counselors, and security. So we're looking at not only academic issues, but we're looking at social at-risk types of issues, and we're trying to tackle those problems as a team approach so that we can keep kids from failing their courses. So that was a systemic thing that we did in our building. And I know out at Eagle River High School, they implemented professional learning communities this year. And one of the major topics that they discussed as a building was failure rates and how to keep kids on track as a building. And so in their PLC time, they would sit and they would talk about strategies of the building, individual students, how to keep them on track or get them back on track. So those are a couple of examples.
I think some of the confusion, and this is just a personal opinion, but the goal was worded, decrease the percentage receiving an F. If we had said, increase the percentage of students passing, I think it would have had a different feel. But when we're tracking the negative, and so it could have been a translation between our office and the actual school site, where somewhere down the line, it looked like quick giving Fs in some of the schools. I mean, some kids earn Fs. So it's an issue of us figuring out why they're getting the F, and which is what Kirsten's saying, getting into the prevention mode. So we have work to do there.
And so that was part of an initiative for the board goal is the graduation rate. How to mark it was the data. So the initiative was created with the data. Next year we're going to learn and say this is, do it in the positive to understand a little better. But and create school improvement plans that supervisors visit. And I'll go ahead and share. We have identified, all of us, from principals to directors to superintendent, that we haven't done a good job of speaking the truth about how we do business. our evaluations over the last many years are a sign of that. There are not very many evaluations that have anything else but, what are the, what's the top one? Exemplary. So over half of our people, probably 75% of our people are exemplary. If you look at the other side and just look at negative, I'll give you a data point. 800 non-tenured teachers. How many indicators? 21? 22 indicators for 800 people, and only one of them, not one of the 800, but one of those indicators. So there's over 14,000 possibilities, and only one of them came back as unsatisfactory. Now,
Challenges
yes. So where is our leadership and our talking with teacher leaders and professionals? We're starting to talk about the business of helping each other, and that those evaluative, our work with that Danielson model should be to better ourselves, but if we're all exemplary, then really none of us are exemplary, you see? So that's been part of the work, and it's been difficult conversations, but we're getting there. We're getting there to say, you know what, I cannot be good at something, and I'm going to ask for help. And then I'm going to use that person as my model or my mentor to get better at it. Yeah.
So I have a question. For special education, and I think I haven't asked this question until Cody graduated, because I didn't want to know the answer. Do we have lower expectations? Because, with Cody, I never saw him bring any homework home. I think his workload was definitely different than an average student. Were his expectations lower than everyone else's? I don't know. And was it because he was in special ed? And as a board member, I wanted to know, but as a parent, I just wanted him to graduate. So I didn't ask those questions.
It would depend on the courses that he took. There are some courses. So Kirsten and Mike could probably talk. Kirsten used to be in special ed, and then Mike is the same.
I mean, special education students, if they're getting a diploma, have to meet all the same requirements as regular education students. So the requirements are still the same. I wouldn't say the expectation is lower. What I would say in terms of the instruction delivery is different for a traditional student versus a special education student. And so that may be why you see a lower homework load for sure.
And I think, just like all these things we're talking about, there's probably an array. Some teachers who probably do have lowered expectations. Some aren't. They're working very hard to help those kids meet those standards, because it is the same for all. But I'm sure, and I know we've got some that, because they're the Hartford kids, they want to get through, so they kind of keep lowering the standard given. That does exist. I would not say it's across the board with special ed, but I think that just in all things, we've got these tiers. We've got these three tiers.
Well, and my experience as a special education teacher is that special ed students are probably working harder than any other student in the building during the day. And from a teacher standpoint, my whole approach was, you're working so hard during the day that you actually need to be a kid a little bit when you go home and not be working all night too. So you need those brain breaks to be a successful student the next day as well. So that's just my teacher lens.
Well, and I don't argue with that, but I just know that, for our general ed kids, we sometimes just pile on the homework. And so that's something I have to write down, homework.
It's something that I can relate from my own personal experience. When I taught in the search program at Benny Benson, we were not allowed to give them homework because of their home lives were so chaotic in many situations. So I had the extra challenge of how am I going to get them to master this material without having that individual practice time at home. So it didn't change expectations, had changed my teaching a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was alluding to in terms of the instructional approach. So.
The work that the academic side has done this year for this graduation, I'm not sure who is presenting this one.
Mark and I were going to present that together.
Go ahead.
So some of the things we've worked at this year are obviously we're looking at different approaches to deliver instruction to our students during budget cut times and things like that, so that we can still deliver the same model and the same opportunities for kids. And so we've been discussing trimesters as a secondary division as a way to implement interventions during the school day, but also still offer all of the same elective offerings and opportunities for kids that we want at school. So that's one conversation we've started this year, and I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so, the things this year, the alignment of the grading protocol, developing some administrative regulations around grading, kind of to get what Dave was talking about with quality control, trying to lower the variance. A B itself in a class shouldn't be terribly different than a B at any other school in the district. And so trying to lower that variance, the grading committee's been working on that this year. We'll have some ARs on that coming forward. We've got the new Gradebook, a couple of items to get parents involved. You may or may not know it, but under the old system, teachers had an option to turn off the view so parents couldn't see the grades. So they had an option internally where they could not reveal it. We've turned that off under the new one. It's an open transparency. Your grades are visible. If the parent wants to go in and look at only their child's grade, they'll be able to see that now, whether there's anything in there or not. We're working on, we can go ahead to the next steps page. Another one that we're working on with the IT department is delivering things directly to principals on grading so that they get an email in their box every few weeks that says something like, here's 10 teachers that have not entered a grade for 4 weeks. So they can go down and follow up. So a parent who, all of you as parents or grandparents know that occasionally you've logged on and nothing's been updated for a while. That's a variance, a lack of quality control that's so large that to get parents involved, we've got to reduce that variance. Next steps as far as graduation, expanding choice, looking at things like online blended learning, dual credit, CTE opportunities are all things that we're trying to do to get kids into something that's meaningful to them, and we know that when kids are involved in things that mean something to them, they will graduate. The trimester, Kirsten mentioned, what that does is we will study that next year. What a trimester does is students get 2 trimesters, and that's the equivalent of 1 year's course. So the classes are longer, but they get their credit in. They have 3 opportunities to pass 2. So if a student fails Algebra 1 trimester A, they can take it again trimester B and still stay on track. In a year, they can get 7.5 credits, not 6. So there's opportunities to catch back up. Trimester scheduling, I've worked in districts that use them. For students who are failing, it does increase your graduation. It gives them more opportunities to catch up, stay on track. Doesn't lower standards, doesn't lower the rigor.
I think the trimester you talked about is that rather than 2 semesters taking 6 classes in each one, you have 3 semesters you're taking 5.
Correct.
Where you
3
get more opportunities.
Yes. That's how they get more.
And for your higher end students, it gives them more opportunities to do enrichment things and things to continue their interest level. So
A lot of times, so your high-end student, if they're in one AP class or in all, and then they really don't take other classes for which they just get to take to sometimes enjoy a little more. So, when there's been opportunity and time and schedules, you'll start to see more art classes come up, more photography, more personal interest things, and it's a delight for all kids.
But it's something that requires a study group because the ramifications, we all have to do it or not. We can't have 2 schools on a trimester with all our traveling and multiple abilities, so we have to really study it. We have issues to work through with the concurrent dual enrollment and so on. Dave?
Can I go back to Zangle?
Sure.
What kind of accountability do we have on Zangle? My understanding was there's a policy about, and I don't know what it's not our policy, not a board policy, it's probably one of your admin regs, or maybe it's something you just do informally, about what the standard teachers are supposed to comply with regarding Zangle reporting. What is that?
You want to?
There is an administrative regulation that was handed out where teachers are required to update Zangle and that sort of thing.
This
Is that
year?
And update how often?
they're supposed to update at least once a week. How often? Once a week.
Once,
I think what happens is that for us, this is where IT and everybody has to be a part of our conversation. Principals with all those things cannot be going in every week and looking with all the things going on. We have to bring them that information. So we're working on a tool. The IT department is creating a script, a program that will go out in there, grab the information, bring it to the principal's mailbox every week and says, here's the people you supervise. Here's 4 teachers that haven't entered anything for 2 weeks. And that they don't have to look for it. It's
So
brought
to
to
your point,
them.
we really don't have,
We don't.
there's too much variance. There's people who
We
just,
have policies we have not been able or
To
willing
enforce.
to enforce them.
because we don't have the information.
yeah, I think there is a problem out there.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
some teachers are so overwhelmed that to comply with the administrative regulation, they're putting something on Zangle, and all it says is present. They were present in the classroom. And now they made a Zangle entries, and, you know,
I see.
it provides no information to the parents about what happened.
Right, okay, good
So
point.
it's something that we ought to think about.
Here's an example. A parent called me and said, the teacher says everyone who has an A in the class doesn't have to take the final. The teacher's posted no grades for the whole semester, so nobody knows, so everybody showed up for the final. And she said, what are you doing here? You have an A? And they said, well, I had no idea.
Wow. Yeah, so going forward, what we're hoping is that we build a system where the parents will immediately call the teacher, that doesn't work, call the principal, that doesn't work, and we get that resolved. Because when we know about those things, we'll root them out and take care of them. But, you know, first of all, we got to know about it. And it's part of our job in the district to give the tools to the principals so they don't have to hunt that down.
That's probably one of the biggest constituent complaints that I have gotten, is stuff not being recorded in Zangle, and then when they complained to the teacher and even up to the principal, no action. So to me, that's one of the biggest things that I'm glad that we're finally putting an emphasis on it. Because quite frankly, to me, if you have a rule and you have a standard and a process, then all teachers should follow that rule and that process. And if somebody has an issue with it, how do you work with that teacher to bring them up so that they can work it through? It's something that we need to really
Yeah,
be
agreed, we get
consistent on.
global, so. So I'm going to share what folks have said, and then if you have any more, you can continue to keep putting them there, because these guys over here are really recording everything we do, so that we're not missing
Can I just say
anything.
one more thing about that?
Oh, yeah.
I think parents can be intimidated to bring the issue up because they don't
They have
want
no problems bringing it up
Yeah,
to me.
to us they will.
Right.
But they're scared to bring it up to their teacher, their
Not
kid's teacher,
us.
because they don't want their kid's teacher mad at their kid, taking it out on their kid. So I think we're hearing it maybe more because we're elected.
Well, therein lies a whole nother issue that we have to work on,
Yeah.
because we shouldn't. We shouldn't have anybody be fearful to bring up a question.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, no.
That's why an
I think
automated
you're right.
system, if Q allows on an automation basis to send a principal a reminder saying, these teachers
We'll
are
already
posted
know.
no grades for 3 weeks.
Yeah. So in your graduation, these are some of the ideas that will be recorded that get to be kind of sorted out later. Remove on time as a condition of success. All schools need the opportunity, classes, digital help, things, so that variance again, an opportunity. Expand high school day from 7:30 to 4:30 with 8 class periods and stagger work schedules of employees. Expand data dashboard for transparency for all. Late start on Mondays at all comprehensive high schools for professional development. Quality control on grading. Here's some PON things that we'll put, and they might belong to other things, but digital classes, one teacher can do videos to others, increased use of volunteer parent tutors, consistency in grading again, to encourage teachers to share ideas and thoughts on a consistent basis, graduation, parades for all graduates in elementary schools so that we have that elementary, middle, high kind of seeing the future. Requirement for, is it by something literacy for graduation? change good requirements. Is it, what is that one? Requirement?
Require for financial literacy
Oh,
for
financial
graduation.
literacy.
Change graduation
Financial
requirements.
literacy, yep. Financial literacy, so change our board requirements so that they would have to do it. Volunteer parent mentoring program, keep looking at innovative ways to reduce achievement gap, differentiated diploma, better job of communicating to parents and students about the programs available. How can we expand our middle college and other programs and explore school calendar shift to 3 trimesters and students and staff in closing, or even year-round school. So these are other ideas that are in that we can begin to work on for graduation. The next goal that we're reporting on is attendance. And basically it was to increase student attendance, and it was increase the percentage of student groups by increasing number of students with 90% attendance. Again, what we found when we look at our deed report that directly is taken from OASIS and what we put in as teachers record, we have over a 90% attendance rate in our district. But these numbers, principals gave feedback where they're doing all kinds of incentives, but yet they're not moving because of our chronic absenteeism. So we haven't met these from one year to the next. They're about the same. They're within a standard deviation, so they're like each other. There's pretty much no movement.
So you raised this really interesting point earlier and made me think about these numbers all different now. And that was, how is this percentage calculated? Is it based on, I mean, if you've got some that are not there at all, is that dragging everybody else down in this calculation, or is this calculation based on how many students achieve the goal?
Yeah, it's the percentage of students who actually attended school 90% of the time. So it's a head count of students. So if you actually take a look at the total number of days attended in the student enrollment, we have 90% of those attended, but only this percentage of students, so for example, total students, 78% of our kids came to school 9 out of 10 days.
Okay, so that's what that means.
That's what that number represents. It's a head count of students, and total students it was 78. And then you can see the breakout of different subgroups that have lower percentages.
And on the dashboard, it's done by month, and we can it'll demonstrate. And we've already noticed that November it took a big dive, and then when we researched it out why, there was no difference between staff and students. Interestingly enough, in the dive, and it was the 3 days around Thanksgiving. So parents in our state look for opportunities to create longer times, because maybe we're just so far distant, so that when we visit, that's a good time to visit someone. But
Well, I can
again,
tell you why.
this wasn't a student issue, it was an everybody in Alaska issue.
Yeah, exactly, because you can't afford to go anywhere any of the times where the kids are actually out of school, because the cost of travel out of Alaska is so incredibly high during those few days.
Like summer right now.
Yeah, so all families are trying to go a little bit before the huge price increase occurs,
Yeah.
or falls on the other side.
And then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because teachers will, if 1/3 of your class is gone, they'll lower their instruction down and do something different so they don't get too far behind. And then more students disappear because they go, well, we're not doing anything anyway. Well, it kind of goes in a cycle.
Could part of this also be the way we take attendance?
Yes, our attendance practices and how and when we record are varied as well. And our opportunities for excused absence are varied as well, depending on parents and the understanding of the system, if you will. So that's one of the things I believe, working on administrative regulation for how we actually record attendances.
We should
They're
warn
literally
you,
done.
again, it actually could drop next year, because with the taking attendance at the elementary twice a day, the actual attendance rate could drop because a student was there any part of the day, they were present. Now we're going to take it twice a day, and you're going to be marked absent for that other 0.5. So the actual elementary attendance could go lower because we're getting more accurate data in the system.
Yes.
In secondary, it used to be if they were there within the first 15 minutes, they were considered present. But if a student arrived more than 15 minutes late, they were considered absent. Is that still?
That is also very between schools.
Yeah. But so no, in practice, if
But
you'd
that's-
already taken
so that's one of
attendance
those
and a
things
kid walked in 5 minutes late, they were still absent.
Right, so they're going to be working to come up with administrative regulations to get some consistency, so when you can look at data, you know that everybody's put it's the same data, it's the same.
And we
thing.
have, there are some policies that if you're within 15 minutes, you're just marked late. If you're after 15 minutes, you're absent anyway. So then the kids are like, well, shoot, if I marked absent, I don't need to stick around, I'm going. So it's our own policy sometimes that's creating the behaviors in the kids. So, and you know, we're just asking teachers to follow through with a rule that's created. They follow through, then kids aren't there.
I just want to say something positive. I looked at the calendar for next year that you guys had set before Andy and I got here, and I really appreciate the fact there's an in-service day on the first day for rendezvous dog races. I think that's really cool, because when I was a kid, we used to get that day off. And so that was one of the things I wanted to make sure we were doing is adjusting the calendar, but you did it already, so I mean, thank you for doing it.
Okay. So the actions that were, who's working on this?
Glenn's got
Glenn, okay.
Well, I've been sitting on my hands for the last time. I keep
Come on up
I can
here.
say something about that. I can say, now I get to actually say something.
Come on up here.
First of all, the first thing I do
Come
want
on
to
up
say.
here.
Oh, sweet. The first thing I want to say is thank you. I have been the senior director or executive director for elementary education the last 4 years in a row, and I just need to let you as a board know my appreciation for what you've allowed us to do. The bringing on of the extra director, so I have 4 individuals instead of just myself and Chris Bjornson, has really allowed us to work toward what the superintendent has been talking about, what everyone has been talking about, ubiquity of practice and certainly continuity of practice. You know, Mr. Donnelly is, and rang the bell clear today, as all of you have, when it comes to variance. I mean, we have this wide variance. How do we narrow that? What do we do to eliminate that so we can really start to see significant and similar academic outcomes for all of our girls and boys? Of course, you always bow to the superintendent. She covered a lot of the things that I was going to talk about when we talk about the data tells a story, and the data tells us that our kids are coming to school. We have good overall data. It's the chronic absenteeism that we are looking at. Miss Milden, who was the elementary representative on the attendance committee, she can, I'm going to give her permission to pop in so she doesn't have to sit on her hands like I was back there. Just wait, you can come on up. The superintendent says, come on up and stand over here in Ms. Milden. You dressed especially appropriately for it, so I'd hate for them not to see that. But when we look at multi-tiered systems of support, that's not just academic, right? We know it's not just about math or English language arts acquisition. We know that it's part of the whole child, and attendance is key to that. We know that every student who is experiencing chronic absenteeism is doing it for a different reason. Maybe their family, their extended family, is out of the country, so they're going to be gone for a month, right? I was talking to Mr. Stock the other day, or just yesterday, he was sharing a story from one of our schools, Platt Elementary, where their English language liaison was talking to one of the families because the family was going to be in Mexico for about a month, and she was trying to negotiate it so they would only be gone for a couple of weeks. But that's that family's story. There might be another story for a family where the absenteeism is occurring because we have a family member who is ill, so we need the siblings, older siblings home to take care of the younger siblings. So we want to take an approach, a multi-tiered approach for those tier 2 and tier 3 kids to how can we keep them in schools? What can we do for them? Yes, Mr. Donnelly.
What kind of programs do we have now that are like, I'm not familiar what programs we have that are like community, like businesses and stuff,
Well,
that
sure.
sponsored means to encourage kids to go to class.
Well, that's a great question, and you probably all recall a few years ago we had Lithia Ford Dodge, whatever that, it was a very long name, the car.
That was a school business partner.
School business partner, and they would give, that was a district-wide. We had then had IBEW also taking part, and we had, I think, the Bouncy House people as a school business partner doing various incentives for the district as a whole. But as the superintendent touched on earlier, it's really, especially for someone like me, if I'm a student, I'm your typical ADD sort of kid, I have a hard enough time managing, even as an adult,
one 10-minute block to the next 10-minute block. So that's not going to reach those students. So that went back, I saw your hand ready, jump right in there.
I can speak to this a little bit. There are amazing things going on around the country with community-wide efforts around attendance. And I know many of you have looked at some of the attendanceworks.org website resources that are there, videos that will bring you up to speed on what folks are doing. And we do have, I know Kathy and Andy Klug from our IT met with the 90 by 2020 folks, and Andy and I are talking with them about coming together this month and having some principals that really jumped in with Tier 2 this year. Hopefully they made a difference in those chronic students with chronic absenteeism in changing their rates. But looking at what we could kind of pilot for next year perhaps, or what the 90 by 2020 folks could bring and what we are looking for. Our goals are in alignment and the research is there. In addition, I would say at the elementary division, we implemented foundations for the first year this year division-wide, and that is a school-wide positive behavior support approach. And so schools worked just on getting it up and running, that's Module A, and then on school-wide positive behavior expectations this year, that's Module B. Next year, you should see them moving into Module C, which is about that intentionally invitational school climate. What are we doing to make parents welcome, students welcome? They want to be there every minute of every day in every class, and part of that work is specifically targeting attendance. So, the research is really clear. We don't want to be taking this punitive approach. Let me call the SRO and, suspend you for being absent a lot, which we have had, curiously, some policies here or some language in our guiding documents that talked about that. It's about being proactive, positive, educating, and communicating.
Just from a community standpoint, just because I serve in the 90% by 2020, one of the approaches this year that was different is they had companies or organizations be attendance champions. And they then focused on their employee groups and really tried to drive home the message of why attendance was so important for their kids in the schools and how it impacts the employee later on. So different groups did that. However, it's kind of a throwing the net broadly instead of maybe we need to move to smaller mom and pop businesses and those that are employing the chronic absence groups.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That sounds awesome, but it isn't probably the target sector that we're looking at. Yeah,
Exactly.
But I think it's great. Yeah.
And to that end, so that's a perfect segue. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. She did not realize that she was going to set me up for this. So what we've been doing, what we've been discussing is that individualized grassroots. Okay, we will use Chinook Elementary as an example. We have a principal, nationally distinguished principal, recognized. I met with her. I knew we were going to get great information from Ms. Stevens. What have you been doing? Oh, I was doing personal touch. I called her. I said, that's great. How's that working? Worst attendance I've ever had all year long. I go, oh, I can't go and share this information. That's not good information. Well, what they've done is, she said, we totally restructured it. So now she's going to the Holiday Express right down the road. If you know where Chinook is, she's going to the bowling alley. Those aren't the big school business partners, but those are where her community members, her families, the kids are going and getting their slushies at the Holiday Express. The families are doing a bowling night. Same thing with where's happening with Wonder Park. There's the strip mall out there on Boniface. They are starting to push out and put signs, kids' posters and paintings. We're trying to get those businesses that are right there in the neighborhood to take part with their families. So when you look at Ptarmigan, if you know where Ptarmigan's located, on the main road there, you have the nail place, you have that little Mexican restaurant. So they've been partnering with them as well too. And you can start to see their attendance. If you look, and I want to invite everyone to look at the attendance data. You'll notice something at all of our elementary schools. You'll see that everyone started really high, and then, of course, we hit November. It starts to take that dip. And then December, January, when our directors were fully engaged, we had a checklist that they would go and meet with their schools. We did a division-wide training around attendance. I think that was in February. And then you'll start to see February and March, along with the training, along with the new emphasis, along with the directors meeting with their principal, you'll start to see in almost every school that prime of attendance back up. So I invite you to look at the February and March data where it's kind of hitting that nadir, is that the right word? And then as it starts to climb for the remainder of the school year.
All right, so they really talked about the next steps, and some ideas from the board actually did come in on attendance, and it was middle and high school attendance. If a student misses a period, how are they counted? So really getting the ideas and squaring away policy and regulation. Universal policies, increased parental involvement, close schools the entire week of Thanksgiving, and increase wraparound service support for community partners in Title I schools. So a lot of the ideas that you shared and had right here were that. We'll go ahead and do one more, and then we'll take a little break. So this is updating the board on their...
Could I talk about attendance more?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I know I'm really monopolizing this, but one of the hardest public policy decisions I ever wrestled with was about the Military Youth Academy. When it was first started, I had a really difficult time with the philosophy of paying kids to go to school, because the kids there were getting pecuniary remuneration for attending class there. And it was really hard for me philosophically to justify somebody getting paid when other kids were just going and being good kids and expected to do the same thing without getting paid. But, you know, a couple of decades have kind of have proven that it's a success. And so I think there's a lot to be said for some sort of very short term, and I really liked what you said earlier. It's got to be short term, not at the end of the year you get a car. Right? That's great for the better kids, right? The kids that are, you know, able to be in class all the time. Better kids, better attending.
Yeah, there you go.
But some sort of short term thing, because it works. And if there was some way to get some sort of private sector funding for something like that, I think it could be effective for short-term type rewards.
It's kind of funny, I had just said, if we could have gotten the funding for that car and then divided it up, and every week, if you were there, you give her a drawing for $100 and everybody saw that $100 get into a kid's hand, then they'd be like, I'm ready to raise, you know, something like that.
And just to note, the kid who won the car the first year was a SAVE student who skipped his family's trip to Hawaii because he didn't want to wreck his perfect attendance. And he needed that car so bad to transport to his job that helped allow him to go to school. So don't get the stereotype that it's some spoiled kid in a car.
Hey, that was a really hard public policy question for me to deal with. And it was kind of like the results justified the means to me, you know, because it's not fair, you know, but it worked, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and with the car, it wasn't that a spoiled kid got it, it was that there's 50,000 kids and only one, you know. So if we could have incentives where all kids saw it and that, yeah, that's something like that.
Thank you for letting me say that.
Yeah, oh no, these are good. The next one is recommendation, and right after recommendation, we'll go ahead and take a break. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom. I don't think I was going to go through these. Were you going to go through all of them?
I think I'm going to focus on site presentation and student nutrition.
I was doing it, yes? The third one. I'm doing the third one. Okay, so we'll start. Site
All right.
presentation, go.
Well, first, thanks for allowing us to participate in this event. I think this is a great opportunity to present information and get feedback. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to focus on site presentation and student nutrition. And what I'm going to do is provide information with some analysis. So it'll be a little bit of a wave talk, but I would ask, you know, throughout the process, by all means, ask questions, make comments. I'll start with the site presentation first, and just to relay a quick anecdote. When Dr. Bishop came on as the superintendent, you know, one of the things that she commented on is that site presentation, you know, the appearance of your buildings really does represent the pride and ownership that we feel for the Anchorage School District. So it was really through her inspiration that we being myself, the Senior Director of Maintenance Operations, and a few others, developed a cyclic plan where we could, in fact, get after, in a programmatic way, the site appearance of all of our schools. So just to capture what we have done so far and what we are doing now, we have, based on Dr. Bishop's guidance, we've hired 15 kids, students at KCC, as summer hires to help us in weeding, mowing, grounds maintenance under the supervision of a Teamster. grounds maintenance technician. So that'll help us there. But we're also focused on painting. And right now we're intending, as a part of our cyclic painting program, to paint 5 schools, roughly 5 to 6 schools a year, high school, middle school, and then anywhere from 3 to 4 elementary schools. So we're in the process of putting those term contracts into place, and then carpeting. Probably taking longer to do a cyclic replacement of carpet throughout the district, but again, carpeting it's important from a air quality and just a cleanliness standpoint inside of the buildings.
And
So
I'm going to add to that, when Tom does research on the bonds as well, and the board had feedback that was something he found out, people don't like paying for those minor things, even though they're major, because they cost, technically by statute and ordinance, some of those things are major maintenance because of the cost. But carpeting, people feel like you should be taking care of your own carpeting, you should be taking care of your own paint. So we're trying to balance out, with the state funding being different, with the board's feedback, of focusing on those major things, whether they're written or not by what the law says, and then taking care of the everyday things, even though it isn't a money amount that makes a major maintenance or not. But the idea that I'm paying for paint on the building, shouldn't that be something you do? It comes back to us.
yeah, and to get to Dr. Bishop's point, when we think about painting really is preventive maintenance for your building. It protects the outer envelope of your schools, which over time makes a big difference. It'll extend the period that those buildings can go without requiring major maintenance. So again, it's a good preventive maintenance technique. With regards to the cleanliness, I just have to submit to the board members, we're very sensitive to the cleanliness of our schools, inside as well as on the outside. And just to kind of bring you up to speed where we are right now, this year we hired a new director of operations, a gentleman named Rob Holland, expert in this field. And going back to the feedback piece, Rob has made a personal visit to every single principal in our district to get feedback on how we are doing. He's been in the schools talking to BPOs, talking to our custodians to make sure that we are meeting those standards. And I would tell you that our custodians are extremely busy. If you look at our statistics from the KPI standpoint, each one of our custodians is roughly doing about 31,000 square feet of building custodial work every day, which puts us way up in the top end of the upper quartile for KPI. So we got some very busy folks doing some great work. We do have checklists that we maintain. We have, through Patrick Garrity, received survey feedback from our school-based staff, as well as all of our supervisors are responsible to inspect schools throughout the district, not just those that are being cleaned by their own custodians. And then lastly is another initiative. We are standardizing training for our custodians and for our BPOs, just to make sure that we are maintaining a standard across the district.
What's the difference between a custodian and
Building plan operator. A custodian is employed specifically to clean schools, whereas a building plan operator, I think this goes back years, where back in the day when boilers were coal powered, BPO lived at the school. His responsibility was shovel coal into the buildings and make sure all those systems work. The BPOs, generally speaking, are more handymen, whereas the custodians are focused on mopping, sanitation in bathrooms, and those kinds of tasks.
And so do we have some schools that just have the BPOs, and then other schools that have a mix of custodians?
Every school has a BPO, and every school is assigned a custodian, and then based on the level of either middle school, high school, secondary, have more than one custodian assigned. Our elementary schools have a single custodian, and then float custodians to cover the additional.
Now, when you say secondary, how is that determined? What schools are secondary? The ones that are administrated as secondary?
No, secondary, high schools, middle schools. More floor space to clean.
Yeah,
Requires
we've got
more.
some schools that overlap. Like,
Oh,
we've got some
K-
we've got K through 8 schools. Are they considered secondary or?
No.
What?
No, I think I'll have to go back and check, but I believe K8, it's based on
Square footage of
of the building. And most of the K8 buildings are consistent with our elementary schools. But I can go back and verify that. I don't know the specific answer.
But the goal isn't to classify them, the goal is to have them clean, and so if there was a problem, that's what we address.
So real quick, if I might, to transition over to student nutrition. In short, we have partly met this goal. Up front, our goal is to provide the best meals to our kids. That's what we are about. But we recognize that we operate within constraints, financial constraints, and then USDA requirements for what we provide to our kids. But again, you have a group of people that are absolutely dedicated to providing the best possible meals to our students. So if we can go to the next slide, please, Mike, and we'll come back to that one. Just to give you a quick snapshot of where we are this year at the end of the academic year compared to the previous school year. So just to orient you to the chart, the top bar, the top row will show you the numbers of breakfast meals served, the average breakfast meals served, and then same lunch served total, and then the daily average. If you go down the first row, again, it's the previous school year. The second row is the year we just completed, and then you'll see a difference and then a percentage change. In a nutshell, we served fewer breakfast meals this year than we did lunch meals. And you can see the numbers, but in the end, what this represents, the district actually came out with a positive financial outcome.
That shows it on the other one, yeah.
In short, what happens is, a lot of our funding is through the federal government. We get reimbursed at about a 40% greater rate for our lunch meals than we do for breakfast. So even though we served a lower number of breakfast meals, the increase in lunch meals accounted for that loss of revenue to a greater point. So we gained just through the month of April, we were up $200,000 in revenues through meal sales.
And just so you know, the way that nutrition stays in the black isn't through the reimbursable meals. It's for creating basically a capitalist system. You have to create meals in your secondary schools and elementary. You're battling brought lunches versus secondary. It's open campuses. So we have to create the kind of food that kids will stay at their school to buy, so that is the revenue piece. It's not in the free and reduced. It is literally in the full price meals have to be good enough to buy. So you have to create a competitiveness with outside sources. And it's kind of funny, Catherine's laughing. They are working, getting with the Boy Scout troop, who gave them some feedback on their cheese sandwiches that said, you know what, when you change cheese, we don't want your grilled cheese anymore. So we're going to go back and say, what is it about the cheese that you don't like? How can we make a better grilled cheese sandwich? So that is how it is technically a business. This is the business side of the house, because if we fall under in our lunch program, it comes out of operations. So you're funded, the three major separate accounts: operations, transportation, food service. If our food service goes in the hole, it comes from general operations. So you want to have that function taking care of itself, just like transportation, so that it's not coming out of the operations, overall operations.
I don't know if you were going to touch on this, but we were just talking yesterday with our student representative to the board, and I'm really happy that Student Advisory Board is going to have a middle school and a high school student sit on the advisory board before those meals are ever made to give you the feedback on what kids will eat.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate, it was actually Cub Scouts. They're
Oh,
probably
sorry.
more more upfront than Boy Scouts sometimes. They're a little younger age-wise. But getting the input from our students and our customers in terms of what they will eat versus what they won't. And I'm going to go back to the sweet potato.
Gummy mash.
Yeah, gummy mash. There's not even a better word for it. I think Tam's the only one that liked them.
I told you my story.
Yeah, well, if you have a lot, they might be okay at a secondary level. But I think getting the input from our customers has made all the difference in working through what I'll call the efficiencies as well as the customer satisfaction. But efficiency-wise, is what I haven't seen is how are we on track with all of the equipment that we have authorized that will make the process more efficient, that also should reduce, our landfill costs as well as our.
The equipment has been acquired.
The equipment showed up in January. It got set up. They did the training. And now they're going through the testing of the different foods because it's different types of plastic and materials. We won't see the results, the efficiency gained until next year. One example is they made a bunch of chicken nuggets and the type of plastic put grease all over the trays. Elementary schools don't have dishwashers, so they had to switch to a different type of plastic. So it's not just, the machine can do everything it wants to do. It's figuring out for each of these products what's the best way. They have to go back through and figure out how long, at what temperature, because you want consistent standards across the schools. And so that's the piece that Andy and his team will be refining this summer to be able to in place it next year.
Thank you.
Just one other observation, since on the days that those special meals were put out, I went to the schools and ate with the kids. And an observation where just, it's the customer service mentality, where when you were doing the new Asian dish, sweet and sour or chicken or whatever it was, the principal had thought in advance and ordered chopsticks. And so the kids were so thrilled. Every single kid at the two tables was eating the dish, and they were trying the chopsticks. Of course, then the teacher and me said, well, don't throw those chopsticks away. Put them in some sanitizing, and then you can use them for art projects. But it was like, the principal, it was brilliant. Everybody wanted the dish because they wanted to practice using chopsticks.
And that's a keeper approach. Jim started it, and Andy sustained it, where we continue to focus on specialized cuisine.
I'm curious some more financial information, the dichotomy between the reduced and the free meals versus the fully paid meals.
We'll talk
one-on-one.
Yeah, and we have the whole last hour is the business with the money, and so we reserved an hour for that, so we'll get to that. And Jim had prior to
A one-on-one would be better for that,
Yeah.
because it's really complex. If you want to look at efficiency of student nutrition and rates and different things with the different types of grants, the Alaska grant, the other, it's something that if you really want to understand it, it's probably not a 30-second answer.
Yeah, so we'll get that. You're giving us good questions. So the last portion of this section before we take a break is recommendation. And these are just some of the items. Again, I want to share that the full initiatives are on our website. The very first slide that had all the 6 different things, the actual initiatives that we wrote are more than just the ones we're sharing. We're just sharing the primary ones, the big ones with you, but we can go back and review all of them, and they're online. So another big one was customer satisfaction, and this is we're using our connectedness survey to talk about safety. This one is a recommendation to others as compared to previous years. Our families' recommendations are increasing, students 3 through 5 increasing, students in grades 6 through 12 decreased. We weren't, it wasn't that we were shocked, but interestingly enough, some of the focus for next year with CKH and some other programs that we're doing in secondary schools, actually this informs that. So principals talking to us about what they needed, where they'd like to go see, this actually informs that that secondary should be the focus in some of the areas that are measured. So recommendation, things that have been done, Tom talked about it, and we could go real quick. Yep.
Yeah, this
Or what was the other one? Did he touch all those? Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
we spoke
Okay.
to most of these. And again, my recommendation, as I mentioned, we're implementing this cyclic program for both exterior painting, carpets, and the like. So going forward, I think it's a smart way to take care of our infrastructure. And then with regards to student nutrition, we talked a bit about this. It's so important that we understand what our kids want. And I think we all recognize we have an extremely diverse population of students, and particularly in our community eligibility program schools. Those are the kids that we really need to understand, because they are probably our biggest population of kids that depend on nutrition provided by the district. So that's where you see expansion of our student and staff surveys to make sure that we're getting after those populations. So happy to entertain any questions.
Yep, and then the other recommendations for more targeted SEL at all levels, infuse SEL into administration, and look for ways to incorporate SEL in secondary schools. So lots of folks thought on the SEL mark, social emotional learning. And then board assigned to be ambassadors specific to cultural groups to increase engagement in all aspects of school, and support partnerships, Arise, United Way, etc., to help our students. So these are some ideas on that recommendation. So, and we'll, as we get to planning for next year, more detailed questions, whatever, on each individual thing. We're going to be here all day to help you. So if there's anything else, we'll take a 10-minute break. Then the next section will be about 10 minutes, and then the financial one is literally going to, we reserved an hour for that because we thought there would be, that's one of the board's biggest, outside of the instruction, the board's biggest responsibility. So we're going to reserve lots of time, but we thought now would be a good time for a 10-minute break.